Good evening, friends. My name's Flo, and in my ministry, I come alongside women from all walks of life, women overcoming addiction, single moms trying to find stability, and those working through broken various relationships. One of the key doctrines that shapes how I minister is the biblical teaching on the millennium and the rapture. As a premillennialist who holds to a pre tribulation rapture, I believe that before the tribulation, those 7 years of judgment, Christ will rapture his church, taking believers to be with him. Then, after the tribulation, he'll return to establish his 1,000-year reign on earth. This truth gives a solid foundation of hope, justice, and urgency, which helps me guide others to see their lives through the lens of God's ultimate plan. Biblical foundation. Revelation 21 through 6 makes it clear that after Christ's second coming, he will rule on earth for 1,000 years. This is what we call premillennialism, the belief that Jesus will return before the millennium to establish his kingdom. But before that happens, the church will be raptured, meaning believers will be taken to be with Christ before the 7 year tribulation. We find that in 1 Thessalonians 4 16 to 17 and 1 Corinthians 15 51 to 52. The millennium is when God fulfills his Abrahamic, Davidic, and new covenants, promising Israel land, a righteous king, and spiritual renewal. During this time, Christ will reign with perfect justice, peace, and restoration, proving his faithfulness not just to Israel, but to all who belong to him. So, what's the impact on my ministry? First, it gives hope and encouragement. Many of the women I work with struggle with discouragement, uncertainty, brokenness, and the doctrine of the millennium assures them that Jesus is coming back, not just to take us to heaven, but to establish his perfect kingdom here on earth. This gives them hope that their present suffering is temporary and that Christ's future reign will bring healing and full restoration. This also gives me a biblical view of justice versus a psychological view of victimhood. In today's culture, many people are taught to see themselves primarily as victims of their circumstance. Psychology often frames healing and self empowerment and personal growth rather than pointing people to Christ. But the millennium teaches that true justice and healing will only come under Christ's rule. This shifts the focus from self help to trusting God's sovereign plan and justice. The distinction between Israel and the church. Many people in the church today believe in replacement theology, the idea that the church has replaced Israel in God's plan. However, a premillennial view makes it clear that God's promises to Israel are still intact. The millennium is when Israel will finally experience the fulfillment of God's promises, showing that he is always faithful. This helps believers interpret scripture correctly and understand their place in God's redemptive plan. Urgency in evangelism. With the pre tribulation rapture, this reminds us that time is short. Christ could return any time for his church at any moment, and those left behind will experience the horrors of tribulation. This truth should compel us to boldly share the gospel while there is still time. Instead of getting caught up in debates over prophecy, we should let our understanding of the rapture and the millennium drive us to be more intentional in sharing Christ's love. I tell my ladies all the time, the only thing you can take to heaven with you is people. In the end, understanding the impact that this has on my ministry helps us understand it provides hope to the broken, it corrects cultural misconceptions about justice, it reinforces God's faithfulness, and fuels our urgency to share the gospel. Knowing that Christ will reign should change how we live today. It should encourage us to trust his plan, proclaim his truth, and eagerly await his return. The millennium isn't just a future event, it's a reality that shapes how we minister in the present. Thank you for listening, and you guys have a great night.